This is a general meeting of our Paisboa Health Benefits Trust. The trustees have invited you to come today for a quick update, hopefully a quick update on all the things that the trustees and our brokers have been doing to move the program along, so we'll be ready for our renewal in November, and also longer-term plans and investigations that we're carrying out on behalf of the trust. So without further ado, I'm going to hand this off to John Mannion of Armstrong Doyle Carroll. He's going to report to you on various renewal efforts that they've been engaging in on our behalf in association with the trustees. John?
Good morning, everyone. Just a couple of housekeeping things. So I need to stay locked into the podium because we're recording, and for the webinar's purposes, I need to speak here. So if there are questions as we go along, as we've done this in the past, we'll reiterate the questions for the microphone so that the people who are at their desks at work, which I think we have 50 people tuning in on the webinar, they'll be able to hear those questions. Another point of housekeeping is someone's missing their car keys. So if you drive a Ford and have a little knife. I visited with John earlier. My calling card. There it is. It's sitting up here for anyone who is currently missing their car keys. Okay? And we do like to keep this informal. We want to thank everybody for showing up this morning. We know that there was some traffic out there, but we do appreciate you taking the time. What we wanted to do is we typically have this big meeting in August where we go through the renewal. We take a look at Paisboa, HBT, and its totality, and it's a nice gathering at that time. But there's so many balls in the air and there's so many moving parts that we wanted to just take an opportunity prior to the August meeting in May, just to give everyone an idea as to where things currently stand for your edification and for you to bring back to your own schools and report back to the necessary parties. So we thought that that would be an opportunistic time to do it in the May season. Okay? So what we'll cover today is actually quite a lot of ground. And if anything comes up along the way that you'd like to stop and explore a little bit further, by all means, please raise your hand or chime in online with the question tool. Colleen Atwood is over there, and she'll give us those questions that come in via webinar. But just a couple of things we'll cover today. We sent the dental, which is currently with Delta Dental, out to market. And we want to report back to you the results of those findings. We sent the life and disability also out to market. And so we RFP'd that. We want to give you the results from that action. Aetna is currently out. We want to talk about how we're moving as hard as we can to achieve the most competitive renewal we can for you and what that looks like. We also want to review self-insurance. This concept of self-insurance, what it would look like, what it would feel like, how it impact you, and how we would possibly be able to get there. We want to talk about the 60, 55, 56 compliance. Now, if I just said 60, 55, 56 compliance, and you said, what? We have a problem. Maybe it might be a little bit more familiar if I said 1095C, and if that's still mysterious to you, we have a problem, and we should talk, okay? So please, if we leave this meeting today with only one thing, it should be your 60, 55, 56 compliance, okay? And then lastly, we do want to show you what we found to be a really cool resource we think that a lot of people are going to be excited about, which is the ability for online open enrollment for your employees to actually make the benefit elections without paper, which I know that we all still find very charming, very kind of Norman Rockwell-esque paper applications. But if you can leave that in the past, we do have a bridge to the future, which is through Business Solver and the open enrollment tools therein, okay? So, without further ado, we'll jump into the dental. We have been with Delta Dental now for in excess of 4 years. They're a great carrier. We're very fond of them, and we enjoy the benefit that they offer to us. At last year's renewal, for the 2014-15 plan year, they gave us a 4% renewal increase, which held for 2 years. Now, there's currently 105 schools that are in the Delta Dental block. Previously, it had been with United Concordia. We moved it over. All the schools that were in the United Concordia moved over in a 100% block. And we've added schools every year since that time. But we have to do our due diligence, and so we put it to market to see what the other competitive forces out there would render. When we did that, we sent it out to Aetna, who has a very strong dental block, United Concordia, who we had previously been with, Met, who you know as the Snoopy carrier, and Assurant. And those 4 vendors came back with very, very competitive quotes, and it gave us the opportunity to say to our incumbent carrier, what do you think about this? The interesting thing is that Delta Dental reviewed their own claims history for Paisboa HBT and realized that we have been trending well for the last 18 months. Our claims have been improving considerably. So as such, they blinked and are now going to decrease the rates by 5%, and they'll hold those for 2 years. And that rate decrease will go into effect 11/1/2015 and hold for 2 years out. So that's great news. We're happy to achieve that. Anyone who is currently not in the Delta Dental block, and if you're interested in joining, the steps are incredibly easy. There's 2 plans, a basic and an enhanced, and the rates are loaded and readily available. So you can review the benefits, you can review the rates, you can match it up against your existing, and we can get you into that consortium block if you'd like to. Very simple conversation with your ADC account executive, and we can take that from there. Okay? The timeline on the decision? At any time. So the question is, what's the timeline on making that decision? Any school can enter that block at any time. If it's a larger school, they do want to review the claims, but the smaller schools, we've all the time throughout the course of the year brought 2 or 3 in each year just to maybe offer a dental benefit or to replace the existing dental benefit that they weren't necessarily happy with. Okay? So that's the first piece. Life and disability is the second piece. So for life and disability, we sent this out to 7 vendors. Life and disability has been with Unum for 12 years. It's never received a rate increase. It's only received 2 rate decreases. There's currently 75 schools in the life and disability block. We took this entire mass, which is a little unwieldy. Andrea Doyle spent many a restless night wrapping her head around the data, which was unbelievably massive. When they sent us the claims data, this is a true story. This is not hyperbole. It literally came in the Philadelphia phone book style. It was a ream of paper, and they said, "Here are your claims." And we're thinking to ourselves, what do you want us to do with this? It was not the way we were anticipating the spreadsheet to have been received. So we sent this out to Hartford, to Aetna, Met again, Assurant again, Guardian, Reliance Standard, and Prudential. And when we sent this out to the marketplace with all of this kind of unwieldy claims data, et cetera, it was a lot for some of the carriers to get their hands around. Plus, it's been running well. And it was very, very competitive with Unum. So out of the gate, 4 vendors declined to quote. They said, "Thank you very much for including us in the RFP process. Thank you, but no thank you." So they walked away. 3 vendors did show an achievable savings off of the current Unum rate. Guardian came to the front of that pack with a 2% decrease off of the existing rate, so a 2% drop in the life and disability rates. But what Guardian is able to achieve is a further 1% reduction to the IBC rate. So Blue Cross has a special relationship with Guardian. And as such, if Paisboa HBT was to move from the Unum block to the Guardian coverage, we will be able to take whatever renewal figure is granted at the end of our negotiations and reduce that by a further point. Now, the one thing you have to recall is a point sounds very de minimis, but a point on a block of this size is gargantuan. And when we're wrestling for every possible point out there, to be able to achieve this is very satisfactory. So here are the considerations that we took. It's got exceptional rating when we looked at it with Moody's, Fitch, Standard & Poor. It's got AA or A+ across the board. And in comparison with the other vendors that we ran up against, it outpaced them in all regards. Further, Guardian is able to match all existing contracts and all existing non-standard provisions. And in Paisboa, I can assure you, there are many non-standard provisions. So Guardian is going to be able to meet every one of those standards and specifications, plus it will hold those rates for 3 years. And what we're anticipating is that this transition from Unum to the Guardian would begin effective June 1st, 2015, but would come to fruition at renewal, because this process is going to take time with each one of the schools to make sure that the data that we have on file is accurate, make sure that there aren't any gaps or holes, and that everything is seamless and smooth. So we're giving ourselves a little bit of a lead time here to get this thing done in terms of 11/1 effective date. We're 5 months back from that, but we are trying to make sure that we have no bumps along the road as we transition over. Okay? Yes, Joan Barone.
John, can we assume that that 1% savings in that IBC rate would hold also for these 3 years?
Oh my goodness. So the question from Joan Barone. Joan Barone's question is, would the 1% reduction for the Blue Cross Medical hold for those 3 years? No, Joan, it's a one-time arrangement. It's an incentive to move over. It's a Blue Cross Guardian relationship that they have that we were apprised of, and it does seem attractive. So that was the kind of differentiator between Guardian and the other 6 vendors that we took a look at. Okay. Any questions on that?
Will the life and long-term disability continue to be sort of handled separately outside of the business solver?
Okay, so the question is from Martha at Abington. Will the life and disability still be handled outside of Business Solver? Because currently Business Solver handles the medical and Delta Dental. And the intent was to weave in the life and disability so that we would have one collected bill. And the anticipation is, Martha, that we will be able to weave it in. What we need to gauge is how long is it going to take to transition all the schools from Unum to Guardian, step 1, and then step 2, working with Business Solver to build that into the back end. So we're changing from Unum to Guardian, and then we're also trying to build that in. We're having conversations with Business Solver right now. I don't anticipate, frankly, that we can get this done for 11/1, because when I say 11/1, I don't mean 11/1, I mean 9/1. Your people would make their open enrollment elections in September. So I don't think I can get this done in 3 months. What we do anticipate is potentially getting it done December, January, maybe in the beginning of 2016. And that way what we'd have is one direct bill for all of the schools that have those 3 Paisboa HBT offerings, the medical, the dental, and the life and disability. Okay? Thank you. It's a good question. Helen.
Do they offer an EAP, and is it as rich as Unum?
All right, so the question from Helen is, does Guardian offer an EAP, and is it as rich as Unum's? And the answer is, to our understanding, yes. Question online.
Two things. The sound keeps going out on the webinar through no fault of your own, but we just want to let them know that I'm working on it.
Okay.
And the other question is, will 1% IPC reduction apply to non-participants in life disability programs?
All right, so the first question is, the sound keeps going out. I apologize for that. It's not my fault, though. So like my wife, I'm apologizing for things I did not do. Second question is, will that 1% reduction apply to schools that are currently not in the Unum, Paisboa, HBT block? The answer is yes.
Does Guardian program also have a similar program as Unum, like balance plus travel assist? Please have been value added programs for all.
Yes, the question is, does Guardian have the additional programs that Unum has, such as Travel Assist and EAP? And they do. And then one other point, which was not asked, but I'm going to offer. Unum has a very interesting arrangement, which we'll have to have in the August meeting to kind of flesh out a little bit, where if you have certain lines with them, you're actually able to, Guardian, you're able to accrue points, credits, if you will, that are able to be used for college tuition payment. So there will be materials about that. We didn't want to broach that too deeply here, simply because it's a lot, but it's an incredible value add that I think a lot of schools are going to be very, very interested in. And as we delve deeper into this, I think a lot of people are going to be very happy with that offering. Frank.
We have a feature on the Unum plan that they continue to pay into the retiree account, the TICREF account, when someone goes out on disability. We have had a number of people who benefited greatly from this. So I'm just curious, is that also a feature of the plan? Yes. You have to
Well,
repeat it.
while we're getting things fixed, this is Bob Miller again. Sorry to introduce myself. The feature that Frank is talking about is of
Bob, you
minimum.
might want to repeat it for the online.
Yeah, okay. Frank asked a question about the feature in the Unum plan that allows you at a minuscule increase in premium to ensure the contributions to the retirement plan. This is a critical feature of this kind of insurance, of disability insurance, that should be in everybody's plan because of its great value. And here's what it comes down to, and I've worked on this with a couple employees. It's been really of wonderful value. What the disability insurance plan will allow you to do is to insure not only the salary, the 60% of the salary that they're willing to pay up until retirement, but they're also willing to insure both the employee and the employer contribution to the retirement plan, the 403B TI-CREF retirement plan, if that's what you have. So an employee could become permanently fully disabled at age 32, okay, and have their salary paid, 60% of it, tax-free until age 65, as long as you tax as long as you handle that tax feature properly. But in addition, again, at a minuscule increase in the premium cost, they will be making monthly contributions to your 403B. So for the employees that I have had on this plan, every month, in addition to the employee getting a check, the school gets a check to cover the contributions to that employee's 403B plan. So when disability payments end at age 65, the person has a retirement payment to go on to. This is really just a wonderful feature, and we are absolutely assured that this will be a feature of the Guardian plan. But it's not automatic. You have to elect to do it. And it probably, in the long run, it's a much better feature to sign up for than cost of living if you're trying to decide between which additional features you're willing to pay for. Sorry for that, and again, as this program becomes part of what the trust does, the trust can market these kinds of things more effectively. In the past, we've marketed the plan through PASIG, but not resolutely enough to get all our members involved and to get all our members adopting all these wonderful features. Sorry, John.
Oh, no problem at all. Okay. Yes, Ann Munley. That is short and long-term disability. Yes. Life, AD&D, short and long-term disability. And voluntary products as well. Yes, Michelle.
Guardian has the technology to do the carrier connection that we have now.
Okay, so the question is, does Guardian have the technology to do the carrier connection? Absolutely. That's the first question we ask. And if you can't, you're out. That's the mouse.
I'm trying anything, sorry.
And for those that are online, if you are having technological difficulty with the sound, I think we are recording this off of this mic, so it will be available.
Yeah.
Which means you get to view it again. But you could fast forward. It's like TiVo. All right. Now on to the medical. With the medical, like we did last year, we gathered all of the claims information, all of the census information, and I further went out and asked you for your waivers as well. I apologize for that, but we need to do it in order to give Ed a full and complete picture of what Paisboa is, and so they can give a competitive quote. I have to tell you, as of last week, Ed wasn't really actually interested in quoting on this. So the gentleman's name is Vince Viney, and he had said, well, we don't really think that Paisboa has the intent of moving from Blue Cross over to Aetna. So Matt and I actually had the opportunity to spend some time with Vince on Monday, and we gave him the old arm twist. And we said, listen, you can't get into the show unless you try out. So are you willing to try out or not? And after a little bit of cajoling, he did agree to release a quote. So they're going through the data right now, and it is our intent to develop that quote from Aetna for our consideration. And the timeline on that is a little tricky because here it is, May 13th. And if we were to then come out with a competitive quote, it has to be matched up to the existing IBC quote. And then the turnaround time for those two considerations is quite quick. But if there's a differentiator between those two carriers, which is worth considering, we'll call a meeting that has everyone attend to say, listen, it's an apple to apple on the plans, it's an apple to apple on the networks, and everything that's uniform is making sense to us except for the costs, right? Costs would be the driver there, and we would be able to make a decision based upon those factors. So we just wanted to let people know that it is out to market. We are taking a look at Aetna as a provider. Question sometimes comes up, why don't we look at Cigna? Why don't we look at United? The answer to those questions is their network is not as robust as the IBC/Aetna. IBC and Aetna are uniform. They're a mirror image. But if you were to go to a United or a Cigna, you have drop-off. The one thing we don't want is for a person's doctor to not be in our network. So we can't really look at them simply because that kind of precludes the decision. Okay? Now, in terms of the renewal, when we try to achieve the most competitive, the most tight renewal possible, we have to use a number of leverage factors, one being Aetna, but this year we're going to employ a new strategy, which is using the firm of Milliman. Milliman is an actuary firm who is very, very renowned in the industry for their abilities to sift through data and accurately predict outcomes. So Milliman has been around for decades, and what we've asked Milliman to do is act as an advisor for the actual renewal process. So they're going to be going through all of our claims data, and then they're going to run a model for us, if you will. And we'll be able to use that in comparison with the IBC renewal. So IBC generates a renewal, and it's kind of like standing in front of the Pope, and the Pope says, yeah, trust me, it's all in there. What we have to do with IBC is similar to that, and they say, trust us, it's all in there. We go through every line item, we try and make them sharpen their pencils as much as we humanly can. Plus, we've had 5 years of this renewal shifting each time. So if you were to take the 2012 versus the 2013 and 2014, one has 32 lines, one has 34 lines, one has 36 lines, so it's a continuous shell game with them. What we're happy to do here is have Milliman come in, give them an analysis that's going to be based on the same claims data as IBC, and sit down with IBC and say, no, we don't agree with your numbers based upon these types of data points. So that's going to be fun, and we're looking forward to that exercise. So we're using these leverages. We've got the Aetna quote out there. We've got the Milliman study out there. We've also even begun a conversation with Benecard, which is a drug company. So Benecard, we used them a couple of years ago, and they reached out to us just recently to say, do we want to take a look at the drug as an outsource? So we're going to potentially explore that as well, again, just as a leverage opportunity to keep the IBC drug quote as low as possible through an external factor. And using all of these things is going to hopefully get us the most optimal outcome possible. Real quick commercial, just a reminder for people. We talked about this at the December meeting, in this office actually, that there is a plan elimination afoot. So we have 3 plans out there that have incredibly small population sets. And we announced this in a Friday flyer, we announced this via email, we announced this in December, and I'm just announcing it again, that come this fall renewal, those 3 plans at the top, the personal choice C2F202, the personal choice C4F502, and the drug plan, which is a 5, 10, 25, they're all being eliminated. So they're no longer going to be offered. The schools that have population sets in them have been notified, and they're going to be notified again. So if you have that plan currently on the table, it will not be offered as a renewal option. We are going to add an additional drug option to the menu. We've had 3 drug options on the plan menu for years now. 10, 20, 35, 15, 35, 50, and 20, 40, 60. And we've kind of seen a little bit of a stagnation in the pool there. So we're going to throw this additional plan option out there, which keeps afoot with market forces. And it's a 20, 75, 100. People look at that and they say, $100 for a non-formulary drug, that's a garish amount. But it's not if you were to look at any of the ACA plans that are on the exchanges right now, which is where close to 15 million people have gone over the last 2 years. So if you take a look at those plan options that we have in place, they're a little archaic. So we wanted to just give one more out there as a consideration for people when you're getting ready for your renewal decisions in the fall.
Is adding a prescription option considered adding a plan? Is there a limitation to something?
So the question is adding a prescription drug plan considered by IBC's guidelines, adding a plan? No, it's not. What we would do is we would just ask people when you're you're conducting your renewal exercise. If you're looking at your renewal increase and you have a 15-35-50 drug plan, to move to a 20-40-60, that saves you 2 points. This plan would save you 8 points. So it's just a factor, and we would say swap out one with the other. You keep your medical the same, so it's not in addition to, it's in replacement of.
John?
Bob?
So that's, my question is, that's 8 points off of just the drug part?
No, that's 8, but the question is, if you were to move to that 20, 75, 100 plan option, is that 2 points off the drug? Or I'm sorry, 8 points off the drug. It's 8 points off the total. So if anybody had a 20, 40, 60 drug plan currently, and you were to move to this, the factor, it's actually a 40% decrease in the drug, which actualizes out to about an 8% decrease in the total rate. Significant. And if you were to do the math to say, well, what are my people's out of pocket going to be? Because you don't want to just leverage that all into them. The vast majority, 80% plus of our usage is generic. So the generic number would actually stay the same. It's the brand and non-formulary. And we can look at that. All the data is readily available.
And John, do you have to do that across your entire school? One
No.
RX across your whole school?
Thank you, Bob. The question is, do you have to change that RX across your entire school? No, you don't. Then it would be judicious to offer a plan which is the most cost-effective from your people's out-of-pocket payroll contribution side of things, and then a richer plan for the people who don't mind paying more for a richer benefit. So you would be able to put in a base plan, maybe a mid plan, and then maybe a buy-up Cadillac plan option. It's just something for people to consider. We have this philosophical debate, and we'll say to people, that plan's too expensive, but I'll say, well, that's a usage fee versus a person's payroll contribution fee. That payroll is guaranteed, and they might need that money in their check, so let them decide. And you could put 2 plan options out there, a base and a buy-up. Helen?
Do the drug co-pays count toward the out-of-pocket maximum?
Great question, Helen. Do the drug copays count towards the out-of-pocket maximum? The answer is yes. All right. Now, does Blue Cross accurately collect all that data and apply it? The answer is, I don't know. They have accumulator issues, and we've heard about those for the last year and a half, where we're not necessarily sure if all those pieces are connecting. Because when we talk about drug, right, you have to remember this. Blue Cross is at 19th and Market in Philadelphia. That's their medical plan. That's where everything is residing. Their drug plan, you think, is called Blue Cross. It's actually called Future Scripts on the card, but it's actually called Catamaran out of Chicago, and it's owned by United Healthcare. So follow that rabbit down the hole. And then, Michelle, when you ask me, is there anybody having problems with Future Scripts? I say, well, yeah, because it's convoluted. So we work to untangle those knots. Okay? Yes?
Someone's clarification. So a school can offer 2 different prescription plans, not just one for all.
The question is, can a school offer 2 different prescription drug plans? Absolutely. So if I was to have an HMO 15 with a 1535-50 drug plan and an HMO C4F5 with a 207500, that would be an ideal setup of a base plan with a richer buy-up plan. And we have a lot of schools that do that. They'll have a C3F3 HMO, which is a flex plan. It's a little bit of a benefit where some of those bottom line items, such as physical and occupational therapy, they get a little bit diminished against the HMO 15 contract. There's a stark difference. A lot of schools will set it up as a base and a buy-up option, and you don't have to align your drugs across the board. They can be different.
John, but this choice of what health plan to connect to which RX plan is a school-wide choice. It's not the individual employee that says, oh, I'd like the less expensive RX option with whatever medical plan I want.
Right. The employee can't choose a la carte. The employer selects the plan buckets that the employee will go into. And if it's an HMO 15 with a 1535-50, that's the one plan wrap. And then the other option could be that C4F5 with the 2075-100. Those would be the 2 buckets they can select from. They can't pick and choose the drug plans accordingly. All right? Okay. Any other questions, Colleen?
Not right now.
Okay. All right, what we're going to do is shift gears, and we're going to talk about self-insurance, and I'm actually going to turn it over to Bob for this.
Okay. Sorry, I have a little tadpole in my throat. Hopefully it won't grow into a frog and choke me. As you can see, we're engaging in many efforts to make sure that the renewal for this year is as economical as possible. The efforts with Aetna Millman and with Benecard should produce some positive results for us, as well as our negotiations with Blue Cross. What we have and what benefits us in all these areas, particularly since the creation of the trust, is having this vast number of employees and their dependents insured together is the key strength that we have in the market. We're enhancing that strength by being a single purchaser, believe me. Aetna's interest in bidding our business has grown tremendously since we formed the trust. So that strength in numbers is not something that we want to play around with. We don't want to lose it. At the same time, as we ask Milliman in particular to investigate our role in the market, in other words, to take our claims experience, our demographics, and investigate what our place in the market is, they're going to come back with two groups of things. One is some idea of how hard we should be negotiating for our renewal, how we should evaluate the prices we're getting from the insurers. And this is the first time I think we really have an independent view of where we should fit in the market, which is a wonderful thing to have. But the second thing they're going to come back with, and part of the reason we hired them, is they're also going to come back with an impression of how much better we might be able to do if we were to go to the market on a self-insured basis. Just theoretically, what advantage could that create for us from a price point of view? That'll give the group some sense of what energy it should put into the mere thought of doing self-insurance. Excuse me. Now, in addition to that inquiry, I'm going to have Carol Lerner come up because she's been running an RFP process on behalf of the trustees to investigate the other feasibility issues involved in having a group our size and of our legal construction go into the market for self-insurance, and she can report on that. Carol?
Thanks, Bob. Okay, can you hear me? Okay. So the trust put together a request for proposal that requested a strategy regarding self-insurance, and it was comprised of ensuring that the trust is operating in accordance with all federal regulations and state regulations, that the trust provides members with a variety of plan designs, that the trust leverages cost savings through wellness and other initiatives to ensure that we have claims cost containment, that all member schools continue to participate and meet the obligations of the plan, regardless of their size, and that administration of the plan is cost efficient. We issued the RFP to two actuarial firms, Willis and Milliman, and three legal firms, Haynes Benefits, Venable, and Susanen, Widman, and Brennan. And we came up with these names by calling MIWAs in other states and investigating our networks to see who would be able to answer this RFP. None of them could answer the RFP with both the actuarial and the legal. So what we decided to do is split it apart. Milliman is providing the self-insurance review from an actuarial basis, and we decided that we're hiring Haynes Benefits. They still need to come back with us with exactly what the cost will be, but Haynes Benefits has set up all the MIWAs that we have talked to who do self-insurance. So that was pretty high praise. And they will analyze the filing and legal structures required to be a self-insured MIWA in the state of Pennsylvania. And with the two components of the actuarial and the legal, we will then analyze which combination of legal and insurance structures would best meet the needs of the members in terms of participation, operations, and cost. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. Yeah.
What's the timeframe for getting some of this, and what would be the timeframe for actually?
Yeah, that's a great point. This is not going to happen in November. And we don't know, but it kind of depends on what they come back with. And the legal is an investigation of, can this be done in Pennsylvania? So depending on what kind of legal hoops we may need to jump through, but it will not be November, and it may not be the following November. I mean, we'll definitely make sure we keep everyone posted on our progress.
So I think we'll report back to the group as soon as we have any significant information. I think you can count on the fact that there'll be a significant report, if not a conclusive report, at our August renewal meeting. That's what we're pointing to as it's really our big governance opportunity for this group once a year to consider what directions it wants to go in. So I think we'll hopefully know enough by early August in order to give the group some grounding in this whole issue. So you can count on learning what we learn over the next couple of months, either prior to or at that meeting. And I think if it turns out, both from a legal and a actuarial point of view, to be a huge advantage to the group of schools, then I think we could expect that August meeting will discuss the question in detail, because the wheels of progress in this group have to move a little bit slowly. We have 142 different governances that would have to agree on such an effort. So I think even if the idea is a great idea, the organizing and the convincing and the decision-making that would have to go on at all of the institutions would require, to me at least, a year's notice just to go through that process. Tell me, actually raise your hands if you think you alone could make this decision on behalf of your school. Anybody's got that kind of clout? Yeah, not a lot of hands going up. So that's really probably in the long run the most difficult part of this. If it turns out to be the best thing since sliced bread, how do we make it happen? How do we get 142 schools to agree that that's the best thing? So nonetheless, there's a lot of data to look at, and I think John can talk a little bit about what we've seen so far in talking to Milliman and others.
So what we like to try and do is make these decisions driven by data. We get a lot of questions as to why is this group not self-insured, and we'll hear that from boards, and we'll hear that from people just kind of walking in from the hallway. And the reason is because while that might seem like a nice idea just to kind of spout off, it should be driven by data. So Milliman is going to be able to supply that data, and they've already given us some illustratives, and the illustratives are actually fairly compelling. I mean, this particular slide is a little bit difficult to read, but what they showed us when we had the conversation in the RFP process that Carol made mention of was that it was over a 10,000 year period. So, back when the cavemen were insured in Paisboa, they gave us this great spec. This was in a sample company that only had about 250 lives. But what was interesting about it was just on an actuarial table, what were the chances of exceeding budget, based upon a $100,000 stop loss spec. And a spec for stop loss, for those of you that might not be in the vernacular, is a claim that breaches $100,000. That's a significant claim, but it's not unheard of. Just as a corollary, Paisboa's spec, we're fully insured, but we still have one, is $300,000. So what is that? $100,000 is a NICU baby for 2 weeks. That's that, okay? A routine delivery is about 10 grand, but a NICU baby is about 100 grand, okay? And the chances of breaching that spec and then blowing through your budget, if you were a group of about 200 and 250 lives, you had a 35% chance of blowing through that, of going 105% over budget, and then 115% over budget, you had like a 13% chance. But that was a group size of 200. And so they said to us during the conversation, well, what about a group size of 11,200, which is what Paisboa is? And the possibilities of breaching that spec and then blowing through the budget became de minimis. And for us, while this is all interesting data, and they gave us all these great reports that we'll be able to sift through, what we came away from that was just another reinforcement of the power of Paisboa. So the one thing that we're just continuously impressed by is any of the small schools, and by small I mean 300 and below, you get buffeted by just 2 claims. 2 high-cost claims will rock any group out there. But if you're in a pool size of 11,000, those get absorbed. So when it comes to the conversation of self-insurance, that was a nice salient point to walk away from, just the fact that we have this block which helps each other out. And that volume, we always try and impress upon people to say, it is nice to say, all right, well, I'm looking great, my claims are wonderful, but these things run in periods, and so if you were to take a look at yourself over a 3-year basis, those claims are there, and everybody who's ever joined Paisboa did so because they were getting hammered on the outside and they saved money on the end, okay? What we'll be able to do with Milliman is they'll actually run this report for us. I know you can't see it, and if you can, you have incredible eyes. They'll take all the claims data, they'll run the renewal, and in the circled section now is a fully insured look, but in this section it would be a self-insured look. And we'll be able to see the differential between those 2 price points. The price points are going to be how much does it cost to process your claims on a fully insured basis where you're simply paying a rate versus a self-insured basis where you're paying out true claims. And when we have those data points, we'll be able to report back to everybody to say, yeah, there is this differential, or there isn't. And so it doesn't make sense. And based upon that data, we can then make directional decisions moving forward. So we just wanted to report to you as to where that all stood. Okay? Frank.
We spent a lot of time a couple of years ago and had John Turinas, the book, the company that solved healthcare.
Yes.
Have we pursued going back to them to see how his plan and all of the work that he's done in that group has played out?
Yeah, so the question is, John Turinas came in from Minnesota? Wisconsin. Yeah, with the humble book title, The Company That Solved Healthcare. And so Frank Alois is asking, could we go back and see how they're doing now? They did a lot of ingenious things, and we actually we met with a company called Pareto Captive Services. That's another directional decision that Paisboa could take a look at, which is not self-insurance, but a captive insurance arrangement. So this company, Frank, had read Turinas, had him come in to speak, and what he'll do is he'll say, oh, you need to get your hip replaced? Don't go to Jefferson. Go to Mumbai. I'll fly you there. It's so much cheaper. And great ideas, really kind of out-of-the-box thinking with how they would achieve things. We will certainly look into it and report back, but the achievability question is something that we have an interest with. We might have a person who has a problem not going to Penn. We're going to ask them to go to Abington. So if we were to ask them to go to Mumbai, oh boy.
But it's a choice, right?
It's a choice.
You're making it kind of flip. I mean, they could go wherever they wanted. There was a cost differential.
If there's a cost differential.
Which one they wanted to,
And I think in his arrangement, right, his arrangement was if you go get your hip replacement at the local Minnesota hospital, Wisconsin hospital, okay, it's going to cost you $1,000, but I'll fly you to Mumbai and you can stay there with your family for 3 weeks for free. So he did have a cost differentiator in there, and that's how he kind of built that.
Okay, so anyway, Frank Alois from Springside is reminding us in the background that there are many techniques other than going to Mumbai for hip surgery that John Turinas has employed at his self-insured 300 Life factory in Wisconsin. He's been really a revolutionary in terms of attacking every aspect of cost involved with health insurance. I mean, we've followed up a little bit on what he's had to say by lobbying our members to take on a high deductible health plan, because the key to everything that John Turinas does is putting the employee in the place of being an intelligent consumer of health insurance choices. Doesn't require people to do this or that, but gives them the opportunity and some payback for taking the opportunity to cost control their expenses. I know at our school, employees in the high deductible plan have shopped around for an MRI and have been stunned to see that they can get the same service with the same read on an MRI at a 5-mile drive to a shopping center to get it done for $250 when their local hospital wanted to charge a couple $1,000s for the identical service. So that's one of the many ideas that John Trinius promoted. He's also promoted a company clinic. He has a doctor and a nurse come into his factory once or twice a week in order to provide concierge-level services for his employees. Now, this is an option that's being investigated, being employed by independent schools that Frank and I know about in this country. So what we have to understand is whether we go to self-insurance ever, whether that's even an option for us, we know we have many, many options for cost controlling what we do by working together. So part of what the trustees will be doing, and we're going to be asking for people to join us in this work, is to investigate each and every aspect of cost saving and better health. Every process, every area that we can go into to cost control for this group will mean better renewals in the future. And the wondrous result, if there is one, of self-insurance, you get that in the first renewal, okay? If it's 3%, 5%, whatever it is. After that, it's your claims over the long haul and your management of health costs that's going to determine what happens year after year after year, whether you're self-insured, fully insured, whatever. So count on the fact that, yes, the work of John Trinius is something that we will be paying attention to, and we'll pay even more attention to those schools that we know around the country who are employing some of those ideas. So anyway, if you haven't read that book, read it. There's a bundle of fantastic ideas in it. Sorry, John.
Okay, we're going to change gears now. So that was just a kind of state of the union as to where everything stands. And now we're going to go into the wonderful world of Affordable Care Act. And if you're sitting in your seat and wondering to yourself, why does this seem so complicated? Why is everything so difficult these days in 2015? It's because our own backdrop has become insufferably complicated. And this is an org chart of Health and Human Services since the Affordable Care Act is launched. That is not a joke. This is actually how it runs. And that makes you feel like, lost in the woods trying to figure out directionally where you're supposed to be going. If you feel that way, you're not alone. You should absolutely feel that way. If you don't feel that way, you are on wonderful medication or completely oblivious because you have a lot of decisions to make on a continuous basis, and they're always changing. So what you thought you knew as the new normal will just be overridden with the Health and Human Services memo that says, no, now do this. What we want to make sure that you guys are aware of is this 6055, 6056 compliance. And what that says, in short, is that every American, by law, has to have health insurance, okay? And if you don't have health insurance, you're going to pay a fine. That fine is going to be assessed in your taxes. So how does the government assess whether you're compliant or not? They find out through this 60, 55, 56. And what it will say is you, the employer, are offering these employees health insurance or you're not. And that substantiation is going to come in the form of what is called a 1095-C. So next year, which is really not next year since it's May, and January will be coming at us like that. In January, you will need to supply all of your employees who are full-time and benefit eligible a 1095-C. You'll also then have to submit to the IRS a 1094-C. They'll be getting a 1095-B from Independence Blue Cross. And they're going to have to take that and your 1095-C and the W-2, and they'll have to submit that all to the government when they file their taxes. And some people were actually going to their accountants this year, 2015, and calling our offices or calling you and saying, where's my 1095-C? Well, it wasn't due this year. You could do it if you wanted to, if you're a real eager beaver, but you actually don't technically have to do it until next year. So the onus is on the employer to develop and send these. And you don't have an option to not comply. So the rule is, if you are an applicable large employer, which is, they use all these little codes now, so an ALE, an applicable large employer, which means you have 50 or more full-time employees, or FTEs, full-time equivalents. You are what's considered a large employer, and therefore, by law, must supply your employees with a 1095-C. So just for a moment, any of the small schools out there, I'll let you do it, but don't let anybody see it. You can fist pump under the table, okay? Just give yourself one of these, like, yeah, 20 employees, ha-ha. Sorry, suckers. All right, for the larger schools, you need to comply with this. Failure to comply results in fines. I think it's $100 per of noncompliance. And what we're asking people to do is just to consider your solution strategies to this problem, all right? Now, most of this information is going to be housed in your existing payroll vendor's warehouse. But we have a lot of employers who do payroll internally. So the resource available to you, if you'd like, is Business Solver. Business Solver has the ability to capture all of this data for you and send out these documents to your employees and submit it to the IRS if you so choose. And we had a webinar on this a couple of months ago, and it was attended pretty well, but there were some people that were not in attendance, and we're just wondering, do you have a plan in place? What we're asking people to do is just consider what you're going to be asked to do. That's a 1095-C. And a 1095-C, you need to complete the information for all of your employees on the upper left-hand box, Part 1, all their respective information, which you'll have on file, right? As you pay them, so you know their address and all that other information. Part 2 is easy too. That's your information, who you are, where you are, what's your EIN. The next part is not so simple. Line 14, just as an example, the offer of coverage for the months. It has 9 possible codes, 1A through 1H. And you'll need to know what each one of those codes means. You'll have to figure out how it applies to your people. You'll have to figure, is Joe the janitor full-time or part-time? We're not 100% sure. And you'll have to put in the equivocal code so that he is accurately captured. So I'll just give you an example of this flow chart. If you want to give code 1A in line 14 of the 1095-C, what a poetic sentence that was. 1A means that you've offered minimum essential coverage that had minimum value and was affordable to the employee and the spouse and the dependent for 12 months. If the answer to that question is yes, go ahead and put in 1A. But you might want to put in 1D if you gave it to the employee and spouse but not the dependents, or 1E if you gave it to the spouse and the dependents and only for a certain amount of months. It just keeps going and going and going. It gets so granular. And this is just the 1A codes. I'm not even giving you the B codes. So you'll see that this is incredibly complicated, and if you're going to give this to your bookkeeper, or you are the bookkeeper, woe is you. So I would really encourage everyone to look for an outsource mechanism. And the outsource mechanism that we're encouraging people to look at is payroll vendor or Business Solver. To do it yourself is simply madness. So when we looked at a lot of existing entities that had payroll vendors in-house, and Cindy, can I pick on you? All right, so Cindy Nichols, we sat down at Episcopal, and they have ADP in-house, and we looked at the 2 price sets between Business Solver and ADP. So ADP is currently Episcopal's payroll vendor. They issue their W-2s, and the price point for Business Solver was about $1.50 a head, plus $5,000 to $7,000 to transmit the entire thing over to the IRS at the end of the year. Business Solver was the exact same cost as ADP. She already has ADP in-house. Just go with what you know. And that's going to be anybody who has ADP. You can take a look at their suite of services. You might have Ceridian, you might have Paylocity, you might have Proxys. They're all going to be working in this space. If you don't have a payroll vendor in-house, you can use Business Solver. Business Solver has the majority of this data in-house. And the data is, who are your people, what are their demographics, and what plans are they on? The one thing they don't have, but we can easily answer for, is how much does the plan cost, both you and them? That's a payroll contribution feed, which you already have in place. You're taking money out of the paychecks. So you can upload that, and they can build these sets, and they can have all that data captured, and then they can send that out to your employees and to the IRS. There's information available for you if you want to review this. I have some flyers here on the table in front of Keith Wong from Widener, unless Keith wants to take them all with him. Also, you can just reach out to your ADC rep and we'll gladly set up a discovery call with Business Solver. We did it with Andrea Crest over at Church Farm School. They're going to go with them. Bryn Mawr College is going to go with them. There's a lot of enterprises that are taking a look at this and saying, I know I have to answer this problem. Who am I going to go with? Just don't do nothing. That's not an answer. Yes?
Yeah, kudos to Matt, he set up a call, I'm going with Business Solver for sure. But I was then surprised, Business Solver does not have a lot of dependent social security numbers. So I have to collect all those between now and the fall and report them over to Business Solver. And I have a lot of tenured people that, before we were collecting them. So that's gonna be like an extra step of work on us. I just didn't know about it. We'll do it, we'll get it done. But they need social security numbers for all dependents, and they don't have.
Yeah, so the comment from Heather is that there was a data collection step that was required, and there is going to have that process in place. There's a discovery of needed data sets that might not be in place right now.
Do it, they'll have it, so it's not gonna be a big deal.
It's a burden right now, yeah.
And people are so funny about their social security numbers, so.
Right.
You know, it's like pulling teeth with some people to get them.
So yeah, people might be a little bit reticent to give you that data, but oh, you know what? While I bring up that data in Business Solver, I want to make one little commercial for them. You heard about Anthem. Anthem had a security breach. Millions of data records were released out there, and then there was another one up in Washington. Same type of thing happened. Another carrier that all their data was released. We just wanted to point this one fact out. Business Solver has the most locked down security system in place possible, and they actually told us this when we were RFPing them, and we're like, yeah, data, who cares? Not that who cares, but it certainly wasn't a very sexy type of thing. But when you see what happened to Anthem, and when you see what happened to the other vendor out there, and you think about the data that's going back and forth, now it does kind of resound a little bit, and you think to yourself, yeah, that's actually quite important, and it's nice to know that our vendor is completely secure in that regard. We're going to go to Colleen.
Clarification, so the limit is 50+ full-time employees if it's lower than 5 with IRS.
The question is, where does this line in the sand fall for the employee count? It's 50 plus full-time employees or full-time equivalents, and you need to look at all of your staff to figure out, are you in that or not? Colleen, let me just say this though. If a school has 40 full-time employees and 40 full-time and 30 part-time, you're a 50 plus. So if anyone is what we'll call a tweener and you're not really sure where you are, we should talk and we'll figure out where you are. Bob.
Yeah, again on the cost, it got a little bit swallowed up. The cost of using Business Solver is $1.50 per employee per year, per month, plus what is filing?
What I'll do, Bob, is I'll attach to this presentation and I'll ask that everyone take one of these flyers with them. It's $1.50 PEPM, but there are different specs depending upon what you're looking to achieve. So,
and there's filing, what's your
you need to transmit to the IRS a 1094C, which is all of your employees' data, and you in the aggregate. That's a filing fee from Business Solver that is $5,000 to $7,500 per successful transmission. And the reason that cost is so high is because the onus of that compliance is on them. There's a risk involved. If you wanted to do it yourself, you could certainly submit that 1094C.
Okay, one more question. The information that Business Solver tracks for us that would be needed to fill out this form, should you decide to do it yourself, is there any charge for having that information transmitted from Business Solver to the school if they want to do the report themselves?
Is there any charge to transmit the
In
data?
other words, we're paying Business Solver a lot of money to collect together most of the information that turns out you need for this report. I'm assuming that a school should want that information transmitted to it in the form of a report that can be downloaded in Excel, that would be a free service provided by Business Solver.
The answer to your question is yes. Are there reports available that you could download that data? The answer is yes. However, currently, Bob, there are no cost structure datas in Business Solver. No one at Delaware Valley Friends payroll contribution is loaded into Business Solver, and that's integral to the 1094 and 1095. All right?
I think it's clear what the advice is, that you might want to get this off your
You absolutely want to get this off your desk. To try and do it by hand, it's not advisable. Okay, so I'll give you the hand gesture that I just saw. Those of you that are online, you'll just have to use your imagination. All right, so now what we want to talk about is the open enrollment timeline. The open enrollment timeline, we're just announcing it now so that people aren't taken off guard as we get into the fall, because we do feel that we're going to kind of move briskly now. It's the middle of May. We're going to be getting renewal information from Independence Blue Cross, Aetna, and other vendors as we get closer towards June and July, and then we're going to start off running. We're hoping to have our annual meeting on August the 5th, which is a Wednesday, which is in alignment with where we were last year. What we're asking, and please give me a moment of patience here, we're asking that the schools make their elections by September 7th, which is a Monday. Now, that's a school election. You'll tell us what is our plan or plans going to be for the forthcoming year. We're then asking for employee elections, and you'll see that date. You'll see that date. It's the 5th of October, and you're thinking it gets earlier every year. Here's the logic behind it. If you're able to get that information in by the 5th, it will make the bill for 11/1. If you don't, then you're going to be dealing with credits and deficits for the forthcoming bills, which can be unsettling. So you don't have to necessarily get all this information in by the 5th. I'm just trying to be nice. But if you don't get it in by the 5th, then your November bill is going to be wrong, and it probably won't settle up until January. And that could be a madhouse for your accounting department. So we're simply advising that we get everything in by the 5th. That way it makes the trial bill, which is the 7th, and then the final bill posts on the 16th with the sweep that would occur 3 days later.
Okay, a word from our sponsor. I was telling John to shh, as he was telling you, well, maybe it's 10-5, maybe you ought to do. I would be the first person to miss that deadline, believe me. Okay, fortunately, I'll sub this out to somebody else. The reality is, this is a deadline. It's the new black. It's the new standard. We went through it last year where we had to make our renewal choices earlier. The employees had to sign up earlier. You had to have the health benefits fair earlier. It's the new permanent color black for our schools on health benefits. So let's not lose the discipline that we started to achieve last year. Let's not lose it. Let's keep it moving forward. I have to say, for all the work that ADC did last summer, for all the work that you and your employees did to get this program with the Health Benefits Trust off and running well, I mean, it's not effortless for sure, but this thing has gone well month after month after month. Joan Barone can tell you, she monitors the payments coming in, the payments going out, and we had a couple slight slips in the first couple of months due to bank numbers and stuff like that, but all the fears that schools might have had about, will this employer or that employer forget or be unable to pay their bill and will I get stuck for it? We didn't have the slightest glimmer of that. And the discipline that we've instituted and that you've all been willing to follow with the ACH and everything else has made this a wondrous, easy thing to do, which makes us a great customer to have, which, you know, is one of the bargaining points that John Mannion gets to use and John Doyle gets to use when they're talking to insurers about wanting to compete for our business. We are great business to compete for on many levels, and the business solver, ADC, organizational level is not the smallest part of it. So make this happen. Just say, go back to your schools, don't have any trust. I don't have any choice. The trust is making me do this. Call Bob Miller and complain to him, okay? I've got a 24-hour-a-day complaint phone number. Actually, it works best between 1 and 2 a.m., so, you know, if they really want to complain. Now, on the calendar, particularly point number 1, renewal meeting coming up 8/5. As I said earlier, this is our main governance meeting of the year as well as our renewal meeting. We make it the main governance meeting because we can count on the fact that you're all going to be there to get your renewal package. So, one of the key pieces of work that has to happen between now and then has to do with our governance, with our Board of Trustees. We need to replace 2 trustees who are cycling out of their institutions okay? Actually, they have left their institutions, but are willing to continue to help with the trust work until we can replace them. But by our August meeting, we need to go through a nomination and election process that will allow us either prior to that meeting or at that meeting to confirm who our Board of Trustees will be for the upcoming year. So we must replace 2, which will get us back to 6. We tried to start at 7, but one school dropped out. We'd really like to get up to 9. So we're looking to recruit 5 new trustees to the Board of Trustees over the period of the next couple months. Before you all jump up and start waving your hands, what we have to say is it's hard work, okay? And it's huge responsibility. If the trustees don't get it right, they're personally responsible, or can be held personally responsible by the Department of Labor. I went to a Department of Labor session on enforcement, trying to make sure that what we're doing is being handled correctly. And I have to tell you, out of 50 slides that they put up, 10 of them had handcuffs on them. Screw this up, they say, and not only will we take your money, but we could put you in jail. So I don't want to scare anybody off, but I have to say that the government takes this as a very serious responsibility. It's certainly a critical thing for our schools and our employees. And it's a lot of work. So we want some more people to join in. So we would like, the way our bylaws are written is any institutional member can nominate somebody to be elected to the Board of Trustees. And if you or somebody at your school is interested in being on the Board of Trustees, we want to see you nominated. And frankly, here's the things that we need. We need to maintain the diversity on the board so that it's representative of the diversity of school members. So we want small schools, we want large schools, we want colleges and universities. We want to have that diversity represented if we can. Second thing is we need people in various roles who have the experience and the intelligence to deal with the multiplicity of questions we have to deal with. So we like having business officers. It's great having HR people. It would be nice to have a vice president of finance from one of our college or institution members. And because there's another factor here, which is clout, okay? Sometimes the decisions we make, as we discussed earlier, could involve going up the chain of command, ultimately to as far as the board of directors, okay? We need to have involved, if not in our immediate decision-making, but then in the group of people who pay attention to what we're thinking about and what we decide, people who have the ability to communicate with and get decisions made at the high administrative and, if necessary, at the board level. So think about that as you're thinking about your willingness to participate. And if you're willing to volunteer or be nominated, I would say get that nomination made by somebody in your school who has, if you don't have the clout, by somebody who does. Okay, so that you can count on the fact that when you come and deal with this hard business, that you got somebody behind you who's going to keep up with what you're doing, understand what you're doing, and be willing to think about what's best for your institution with you, because it's a lot of responsibility. And it's a lot of fun, too. We're learning full time, right, Carol, Joan, Martha? We're down to 4 who meet full time, okay? So we really want to get it up to 9. So please do go back to your school, talk with people there, and see about who, if anybody, would like to be nominated from your school to support the work of the board. Okay? Yes?
Just for 9/7 is Labor Day,
Well, we might need to move that a little bit.
We're going to bump that back to maybe 9/5. I had 9/5 there, which is a Saturday. 9/4 just messed up my feng shui.
How about, yeah, I would say maybe 9/9, you know, something, yeah. I mean, you don't work on Labor Day, that's why they call it Labor Day, you know, so people like us can work.
Colleen?
Someone wants more information on how to nominate someone who is
They should send a letter to the Health Benefit Trust trustees, care of Carol Lerner at the Philadelphia School, and we will make sure that an email goes out to y'all saying that. Carol Lerner is acting as the secretary for the group, and she will receive all nominations. We would like to have all nominations made by the end of May so that the trustees can then put together an election process. It would probably be best if we could handle the election prior to the August meeting. At the very least, we will do it at the August meeting. That would be the worst case.
Can you nominate someone by email?
Sure, why not? Yeah, fine.
Repeat the question.
Sorry. Martha asked, could you nominate somebody by sending an email to Carol Lerner at the Philadelphia School? Yes, that's allowed.
John, you'll give in the packet.
Any questions about any of that? I'll turn it back over to John.
Thank you, Bob. So we're going to actually move into the wrap-up section here. So what we'll talk about is, while we have this compressed timeline for open enrollment, we've discovered this great tool that we're going to roll out to everybody that is interested in doing it, which is going to be online open enrollment if you so choose. Business Solver has the ability for schools in the trust to utilize their online open enrollment platform. Now, when we look at it as you can do this full bore, or you can do a kind of skim milk version. In order to do it full bore, you have to think of Business Solver as the hub of a wheel, and the spokes of that wheel would go out to all your various vendors. So when you think about Business Solver, it's in place right now with a feed to Blue Cross, with a feed to Delta Dental. Well, if you don't have Delta Dental, that's a missing spoke. If you wanted to use FSA, we need to include that. If you wanted to loop back to payroll, we've got to include that. If you have any other vendors in there, we would need to include that. And each time that you do one of those spokes, it's $1,500 to $2,500 to set it up. And then there's a PEPM charge, which is included as well. So there's a cost factor there, which we thought was probably prohibitive to most of the schools. If I have a school of 50 employees and I'm asking them to pick up a $5,000 increase for the online open enrollment, that's self-defeating. But the light version makes a lot of sense. So for the light version, what's going to happen there is it's going to be a data capture. And the data capture is who is choosing what plans simply via report, not via paper. Once that report is in, that will feed to the carriers, and you'll be done with your open enrollment. So here's how it looks. And more information is certainly going to be coming out about this. This slide deck is going to be made available as soon as this meeting is over, and we're going to go through this with everybody to say, if you're interested in doing this, we can build this out for you. Your employees would get a link, which is going to be a Benefit Solver, Business Solver login link. You can send that out to everybody and say, hey, it's open enrollment time. Please click here to begin the process. Once they do, they would need to register. The registration is going to be, please put in your Social Security number, your company key, and then your date of birth. The company key is Paisboa. Again, all these instructions will be given. They'll put in their social and DOB. Hopefully they know those two questions. And then once they're in, then they're going to have to sign off on it. This is part of the Business Solver security, which I told you about. This e-signature is a verification, which we're asking everyone to do. And then they'd create a username and password and then put down the obligatory mother's maiden name. Once you've done that, they're in. This is a template site. And this template site is going to be where they're going to make all of their elections from. It's completely modifiable. So if Episcopal was to do this, we would set it up for Episcopal. But if Mary and Mercy was to do it, we'd set it up for them. All of these things are modifiable. So if you wanted to put up a school logo, you can. If you wanted to change the benefits that are up top, you can. If your plans are different from another school, we put in the benefit summaries and the SBCs for those particular plan offerings. If you wanted to include not wellness tips, but something along the lines of, I don't know, cost containment, we can adjust that as well. And then lastly, on the right-hand side at the bottom, a tutorial video, which is saying to your employees, here's how you use this site. And it will walk them through that entire thing. We'll also have handouts for people to use on a hard copy basis, but it gives them a real quick and down and dirty type of guide path, okay? They're going to ask, what is your information? And if it's not changed, then you're fine. They already have all this information for your existing employees. But if you have a new employee who wants to join the benefits, they're going to have to put down name, social, address, etc. So that's all going to be pre-populated, changeable if needed, but if not, or if it's a new person, adjust accordingly. They can add dependents. They can remove dependents. This is open enrollment, so that opportunity exists. They are then going to be able to choose the plans that the school has put together for them in a bundled basis. So it's going to say, here's that HMO 15 that we talked about with that 1535 drug, or here's that C4F5 with that $2,750 drug. Now, if you'll notice here, all the plans are free. And that's not going to be the case as we move forward. What we'll have to do is figure out the rates, which we'll get from Blue Cross or Aetna, and we'll get that number populated into this, and then we'll have to talk to you about what is your payroll contribution. So it's going to be a quick conversation where we have to figure out, okay, A, what plans do you want? B, what's the payroll contribution going to be? We'll take that payroll contribution, we'll put it into an Excel spreadsheet, which is uniform for all Paisboa schools, and we'll upload it, and then it will populate down. So now when the person goes in, it's going to tell them what their cost is monthly. But you're saying to yourself, I'm not monthly. Nancy from Westtown was over here at the beginning of the meeting talking about who's on 26 pay, who's on 24 pay, who's on 25 pay. Based upon that, we would populate it accordingly, and it would say, we're on a 26 pay schedule, so let's adjust that accordingly, okay? Change your primary care doctor if you're on a Keystone plan. If you're not, that doesn't matter. If you are on a Keystone plan, it's got that number in there already, so you would just skip past that page and then make a confirmation. Confirmation is going to be stamped. It's going to be recorded. It allows them, if they want, to print this page off, but there's absolutely no need to do that. If they're doing it, they're just needlessly killing trees. But this is all going to be recorded for you so that when it gets done open enrollment and a person says, I never chose that plan, you can say, ha, 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 yes, you did. Where were you at 9:48 in the morning? So all of that is going to be time stamped for your records, and it's going to be the prove out for what your people have chosen. Kyle.
I have a question from a few CEO action. Can benefits solver take the benefits enrollment downloaded from ADP, meaning employees enrolling ADP instead of directly benefits?
Okay, so that question is a loaded question. Who asked that question? Marianne Mead. So what's that? That's called a reverse 834 file. And so what we're doing is we're sending Blue Cross 834 files. You're going into Business Solver, you're loading it, and you're sending that out. What she is asking is, can Business Solver accept a feed? So instead of going into Business Solver, you're going into ADP. You go into ADP, you load there, ADP feeds into Business Solver, and then Business Solver leapfrogs that information to the carrier. Currently, they cannot do that. They're anticipating that by the fourth quarter of 2015, they should be able to, but I cannot make any promises for open enrollment, so I don't want to hold to that. If that was the issue, we have this system in place currently with Michelle at Haverford School, with Helen at UArts, with Saf at USP. We download a file, and we'll take that file and we'll populate that into Business Solver. So we act as the bridge gap because they simply don't have that 834 file system set up yet. Okay?
Can you say that one more time, what ADP will do?
We would take a drop file. So right now we take a drop file from Haverford. They go through their open enrollment via ADP. All the elections are done there in a spreadsheet. The spreadsheet is then dropped, and we kick it in. It's incredibly easy. It's just not hit enter and it goes. All right. Did you have a question, Michelle?
Would it be easier to go the other way? Like if we have our employees on Business Solver rather than ADP, and Business Solver can kind of
Okay, so the question is, would it be easier to have the people go into the Business Solver platform and then Business Solver would populate out to your payroll vendor? Yes. $1,500 to $2,500 fee to wire into your payroll. So that's a connection consideration you'd have to make, and is that cost effective or not? Helen?
Is that $1,500 to $2,500 per payroll?
No. That payroll fee is a one-time connection fee. And then after that, it's I think it's a 10-cent PEPM, which gets billed directly to the school. Okay? All right. We think that this is huge. From our office's perspective, we're thinking, oh my goodness gracious, we've finally gotten to the promised land. And I'm like Moses, I'll die on the mountain. So what we'll see is hopefully more schools adopt this in 2015 and 2016 as we move forward, and we all start to become technologically savvy. They're making their elections on their phone, and we're into the new age. Okay. One thing that we do want to point out though is you don't have to do it this way if you don't want to. There is no need to make this full adoption if that's not something that you're really interested in taking on. If you have a system that currently works, and that's a tick sheet on a piece of paper, and you like it and your people are comfortable with it, that's totally fine. And we'll continue to assist you with that collection of the data and the import to Business Solver. Have no problems with that whatsoever. We're just simply offering this out there because we think it is attractive, okay? So a real quick recap. Yes, Heather?
Did I miss the cost of the online enrollment?
There are no costs for doing what I just demonstrated. That is what we were calling a light. That's the open enrollment light version. So you're not feeding any of that information back to your payroll vendor. There are reports you could pull down which would show all those costs, but that build out and that capture of what is your open enrollment medical election and dental election would be at no charge. Colleen?
We currently use Bancorp as a vendor. Employees enroll through Business Solver.
We currently use Bancorp as a vendor. Bancorp is the health savings account vendor for Paisboa, and we don't have a line in place for that, but we are exploring if we can make that connection. So that answer is to be determined. Okay. Sorry, Tom. Go ahead.
If someone wants to do the paper enrollment,
Mm-hmm.
their deadline's going to be before October 5th.
If someone wants to do the paper enrollment, should their deadline be before October 5th? I mean, we would want everything in the system by October 5th, Tom, simply because the trial bill is October 7th. So yeah, you might want to bump that back a day or two so that, because that has to be hand keyed. All right. But I do want to point out to you, we hand keyed several thousand in the 4-day period last year. Each transaction takes about 60 seconds. I'm sorry, Helen.
The no charge for the dental enrollment, does that mean no charge if you have Delta Dental, or no charge with United Concordia and Delta Dental?
It's no charge if you have the Paisboa Health Benefits Trust file feed in place. If you have one of those plans, then there's no charge. But if you're going outside of that and you have United Concordia or Met or whomever, there is a charge for those because you're outside of the trust's plan portfolio. All right? So just as a real quick recap, and I'll turn, oh, sorry, go ahead, Cindy.
Two questions. Was there any conversations to enhance the dental offering? Obviously, the discount is huge, but outside of that?
No, there wasn't. So the plans that are in place currently, you have the basic and the enhanced with the composite fillings, et cetera. That is going to be the plans moving forward.
Okay.
If you did want an enhancement, bring it to the board's attention and we could certainly look at that.
I have.
Okay.
No, I mean, not in an official capacity, but mentioning things.
Would you like to go on the record right now?
Yes, I would.
What would that enhancement be?
Rollover for non-use of funds.
Rollover for non-use of funds.
Previous carrier. So if you don't spend that $1,500, they'll roll over X number until the next year.
Mhm.
And if you have an unhealthy dental year, then you've got some excess funds.
A bank.
to use.
Okay. We'll broach that with them. Yes.
So with the online enrollment, would all of your employees have to go in and trigger something even if they're not making a change?
Yeah, there is no easy pass for that one. So the question from Mayor at Notre Dame is it required that all employees go in and make an election? It is. And the reason you want to do that is the same reason that we have them complete a paper form right now. We need a sign-off. It's an open enrollment. So to do nothing, that's a full passive. This is a full positive. You'd have to go in there and make some determination as to what your benefits are. Plus, it's an opportunity for them to verify their information. You like this?
Yeah. The question I have, John, is can they be sitting next to somebody in the business office helping them enter the data?
I have to stress to you, the ease of use of this system is such that while that certainly can happen, I don't think it's required. It's 5 fields. They're completely logical. And my mother can download songs on her iPhone. Anybody can do this. Yes, Martha.
We allow people who are benefits eligible to opt out.
Mm-hmm.
Will that option be one of the choices on here?
Right. One of those screens, Martha, would be an opt-out option. You're waiving your benefits. So one of those screenshots would be, do you want your benefits? No, I do not. And that's an open enrollment election to opt out. Yes, Sin?
So for the schools who are using a payroll provider, and we're going to use that as our online open enrollment vendor.
Mm-hmm.
And you said ABC will accept the file and transmit that to Business Offer.
So the question from Cindy is if you're using ADP or some other external site to make your benefit elections, and that drop file comes into ADC's offices and will load, yes, then when you go in the next time, that data will have been captured correctly. In terms of the payroll contribution, we'll have to load that into an Excel and upload that to Business Solver so that that's fully reflective. But that's a step that we could take. Yes?
And if they opted out, will there be any portion there where people have to supply information on what other insurance they have?
No. So the question is there a section where they put in what other insurance they have? No. You're simply declining the benefits. Okay?
Pretty done?
I think we're done.
All right, so this meeting has been long, but very efficient, I think. And I just want to remind you that we need help. So go back and think about this, talk about what you're willing to do. But and remember that in addition to recruiting trustees, before you all leave, there are going to be a variety of committees that we create or recreate, like the wellness committee. We'll have to be studying a bunch of things, plan selection. Certainly, there's a lot of work involved in looking at self-insurance. So if you have any interest in participating in any of those other activities, but are not interested in being a trustee, drop Carol an email about that as well, okay? Any help that you, or any interest that you have in helping would be welcome and enthusiastically accepted. So thank you very much for coming today. Is that it for questions? Colleen?
Well, I did have one, sorry.
What? That's okay. What is it?
What would happen if the employee fails to enroll online during the
That's fine. The question online was, what if an employee failed to go in and elect a plan during the open enrollment? The logic that is built is they would drop to the base plan. So if a person's in that PC 2030-70 but doesn't make an election, they drop to the HMO, oh well.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming, and thank you especially to the trustees for working so hard. Thank you.